Perfect. Okay. So hello everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on who you are. Welcome to this session. So we're going to be talking about data science. And for that, I'm going to highlight the fact that I have been working with data science and within the data science community in general for the last 15 years or so. And I have seen a lot of transformation, starting with the digital transformation itself and all the processes that we have been transforming and digitalizing. And I have been witnessing, right, a lot of interaction between teams. How do we maximize what we can do with this data? How can we ensure that we can work together? How do we bring the best of the best to the table when we are working on a data project, regardless of the way that it was produced? So we have been listening, and I have been, joining the different sessions during the last day and a half or so. And a lot of common themes, right? We are all connecting to these ecosystems where we have information, data sources, structured data, unstructured data. Some of you may have classic, on-prem deployments where you have oracles and SQLs and so on, providing you with that data. And some of you may be thinking about cloud strategy or how you're going to transform that ecosystem to ensure that you are pretty much keeping to the state of the art in terms of technology. But the one thing that is consistent is that we have different people asking questions to this data in different ways. And that we have a very diverse community. And I identify with this community personally, right? We have been working with data for years. And there is a lot out there that we can be using to leverage everything that we have in terms of technology, plus what we can do with this data. But at the same time, we come to the table with different skills. Perhaps we have been working with open source and specific IDEs and some programming flavor like a Python or an R, and we are very comfortable with that. Or perhaps we come from the other side of the spectrum, what I call, which is the business intelligence side. We were learning how to create dashboards, how to visualize this use case in a descriptive analytics way. How can we represent this use case graphically, depending on what we are trying to accomplish? And within this, the one consistent thing is this very diverse ecosystem, not only from the infrastructure perspective, which is physically where your data is stored and what kind of compute engines you have as part of that ecosystem, but also who from your teams, from your company, from your peers and coworkers is looking at this data in different ways and how we are bringing everything together. Now, involves multiple technologies, involves multiple personas, but the stages are pretty much the same. We start with that business problem that we are trying to understand better. We are trying to describe that business problem the best of our abilities. And for that, we need to connect those variables to the actual data that is feeding that information. Now, understanding that data itself can be a struggle, right? Because you may have IT and IT groups helping you on the support on how to connect that specific data source. You may have a schema that is extremely complex to understand, and perhaps the column names make absolutely no sense to you, and you need to understand that to be able to apply analytics on it. And that itself is going to take a back and forward interaction, right? Then you can actually start preparing that data. And then we have been seeing a lot of these technologies that can help you with that. But at the end, the goal is the same. How can we have the best representation of that business problem with the data that we have to apply analytics and data science techniques on it? But how do we ensure that is as clean as possible, and that is actually describing that business problem in the best possible way. And that is when we go back and forward, right, with other teams, perhaps data scientists, data engineer, IT manager, or whoever is involved in that process, where we can actually enrich that data set, have a better representation on that business use case, and know how we can actually go farther in that analytics journey. And when I say go farther, well, now we can actually apply all of these techniques that we have available today. Again, open source or not open source, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can maximize the use of our resources and empower these users, even in bringing open source, Python, R scripts, all other programming tools, but as part of a bigger picture, as part of an end-to-end infrastructure that where we can actually collaborate as the very diverse team that we are when we are thinking about data science, right? So Dataiku, just as a quick alignment here, is going to be the glue on top of that infrastructure that is going to allow all of these personas to collaborate on an end-to-end advanced analytics, descriptive analytics, predictive analytics process from the design and sandbox stage all the way to production, right? And on top of that, to ensure that that is behaving the way that you think it should be behaving, right? So that is what we call the responsible AI, and how we provide an MLOps pretty much framework that is going to support absolutely everything that is part of that journey by the different personas coming from a very diverse ecosystem, because we all have data coming from some different places, right? So whatever solution you are going to have in place needs to consider that the teams need to be able to tech communicate, right? So they are all building the solution their own way, but we're going to be able to tech communicate. And whatever you produced, I can use it, or I can understand what you did, right? So if you move on and leave the company for a newer opportunity, this team is still able to produce and continue with that project and doesn't need to start from zero, right? So how are we going to connect all of these dots, and how are we going to ensure that we have every single piece of that framework covered by a team that can include personas that code or not code? We can be leveraging all the IDEs and the open source community with the phenomenal packages and libraries that are out there that are actually spot on with a lot of the techniques that we're using today in data science projects. But at the same time, we need to ensure that we have that traceability in terms of the project. What happened? What happened to that data from the beginning to the end? How did we enrich that data? What kind of transformation needed to happen so I can see the table that I have in the way I have it, right? And in general, that data science life cycle, right? So as we can see in the bottom on the right side of the slide, same categories, right? We start with that business understanding. We understand where the data is coming from, very diverse ecosystem. But then you have that preparation, monitoring, evaluation, deployment, and everything else that needs to happen after you actually deploy that data science, right? So what I want to do today is give you an overview of what Dataiku is, what is the user interface, what kind of processors are supporting you at every step of this journey, as you can see here. And for that, I'm going to say the most important highlight here, or one of the most important pieces to highlight here, is the fact that we will be working together. And when I say together, is that this can be a very diverse team and can be with different profiles, right? And those different profiles may have different set of permissions. And within those set of permissions, you should be able to define that some of you will be able to produce a specific set of artifacts, but if you don't have coding experience, perhaps you are not going to have permission to edit Jupyter notebooks and so on. Now, we also mentioned that you have a very diverse ecosystem and that today we may be thinking about the data coming from A, B, or C, and tomorrow it may be coming from X, Y, and Z, right? So you need to always ensure that you can connect your people with the code or no code skills that they have today and your technology and your processes, right? That may continue to change and tomorrow may be completely different. But how you're going to maintain that glue and reuse what your team has been putting together, do not start from zero, and ensure that you have pretty much access to that, how we could pull it, catalog of all of these artifacts that are being created by that team. So when I say artifact, well, to follow that data science process, we will have to connect to the data sources. That is going to be a very diverse ecosystem. We will have people that is leveraging all the open source and perhaps all these Jupyter notebooks where my team is programming in R or in Python or another programming language, I should be able to reuse those assets. And then I will have perhaps a lot of dashboards that are actually showing me how my descriptive analytics look like in terms of all those visualizations that we have and so on. And then reuse those assets as well. So back to the how do we work as a team and how do we ensure that we can actually collaborate regardless of the experience that I have in terms of coding, no coding, or the role that I have that can be like a little bit farther into the data science pipeline and so on. So let's check out one project from the beginning to end, and let's see what is this feeling that a regular user is going to have when trying Dataiku for the first time. So if you haven't seen it, Dataiku is a URL where you can access from here or from your other side of the world office or pretty much from wherever you are. And you will see each of these projects representing a group of assets that are actually creating that data science pipeline with one way or another. So when I say one way or another, I want to highlight the fact that the flow is going to have different colors and different shapes, and that itself is going to represent the history and the traceability of what happened to the data. So let's take a look at one random example. In this example, we are going to talk about different customers. Let's check out the wiki and ensure that we know what this use case is about. We have the typical ABC of a data science. We need to connect to different data sources. We need to ensure that we have the data in the best condition in terms of the quality. We're going to use the AutoML capabilities within Dataiku to produce a machine learning model. Then we're going to deploy it to a machine learning pipeline where we can actually score new data using a different set of data and in general see all the ABC of the data science workflow, right, using Dataiku. So when I land into the project for the first time, right, I will see the history on the right side. So you can tell, okay, I do have a team and perhaps I'm not the only one generating all of these assets. And perhaps there is a team with different set of skills collaborating as part of this end-to-end pipeline as well. So the right side of this screen is showing me that timeline, the history, like, okay, this is a teamwork and I know who has been creating what. And I can also have that traceability. So if that person is on vacation, it's okay. I know that that already happened, and I know that the model was deployed, for example, right? Now, the flow itself is gonna be that representation end to end on what is happening to this data step by step, right? So we're gonna start with a basic. We have data coming from one data source. Let's call it data source A, and that data source is gonna represent the customer information from last year. As you can tell, as soon as we open any of the blue boxes, Dataiku is going to represent that schema of the data. I can see my data table. I can see what kind of representation do I have for the type of data in each of the columns. I can quickly see how many columns do I have, how many rows do I have, like the general ABC of that data table. I can also quickly see the quality of the data itself, and this will give me a red bar when something is missing, empty values, things like that, that I can quickly evaluate. I can also have a preview of what kind of data do I have. In this case, we are talking about customers. We have gender information, and we see that we have slightly more female than male data being represented on this specific data set. And as part of what we are trying to find out here is, hey, do I have any customers that are churning? So I can actually study the historical information. I can add to that historical information if the customer churn or not. I can use that data to train a machine learning model. And then I can actually use that model to be predictive and one step ahead. And hey, by the way, I can actually share this model with you. So here's an aha moment. When I have blue squares, I am representing data. And when I am representing data, I can always see what this data is telling me. So at every blue box in Dataiku, I'm going to have a very robust menu on the top right where I can generate dashboards, insights. Can I create different visualizations so I can describe the analytics here? So histograms, bars, tables, correlations, mapping capabilities, other visualizations that are part of it. We have seen graph charts, like pretty much all the visualizations that you need to represent that visual descriptive analytics. All of that is from the top menu, and every blue box is going to have that. So you can always, at any point of that pipeline, are going to have access to export those visualizations to the dashboard and let different people visualize this as you advance into the machine learning pipeline, right? So that's very important to notice. Another very important thing to highlight here is the fact that from the menu, we can easily see the integration between the coders and the non-coders when we talk about the different personas that are actually working together on this. So everything that is going to be a yellow bubble is going to represent a non-coding user interface that is going to allow you to clean and prepare and group and pivot and unpivot and uppercase, lowercase, parsing dates, pretty much all the typical cleaning of the data that you are doing there. So if I have a data source that is ready to be clean, I can very easily just add that prepared recipe and say, okay, I need to create another recipe. It's going to be part of my ecosystem. I can decide where in my ecosystem I want it. I can ensure that perhaps I use the best compute engines that I have as part of my ecosystem, because I can actually leverage that compute power for each of these recipes as part of the machine learning pipeline. And what I am saying right now is very important to highlight again. So I'm going to repeat it and I'm going to go slower. So when you have an ecosystem that can be very diverse, that looks like the left side of this slide, You are going to have different compute engines that are going to be part of it. So Dataiku is going to help you orchestrate what you do from the beginning to end, but at the same time, it's going to allow you to maximize the use of those resources. So we are not moving data if we don't need to, and we are using the compute power that you bring to the table as part of that infrastructure, which is a phenomenal thing here because it's a win-win situation and you really have the possibility to always maximize the use of your resources when working in the different pieces of the pipeline. So these kind of recipes are always going to allow you to clean that data, right? And they're going to help you. All of these processors are pretty much embedded recipes that are going to help you to group, to filter, to remove the little line, to work with that text, to fold, to pretty much create all the basic things that you need to do every time that you are consuming data that looks like this, right? So in this specific case, I can quickly, do things like parsing dates and resolve IPs, and from the IP, I can extract country and region and city and run this, and then automatically this is generating the process behind the scenes for this table to present me with the columns with the clean data that I am creating right here, right now, right? So when the job succeeds, I can actually see that data table right there with all the creation and all the transformation. And now have a parse date. Now I have multiple columns that are telling me additional information from this one column. I can continue creating conditions and so on within these yellow recipes, right? So huge component there. You can keep adding formulas, A plus B. You can even bring your own Python function if you need to, right? So this can be as flexible as you need it to be. Now, from the flow itself, I mentioned we open the door to both set of skills. And if you don't have perhaps the non-code skill, but you already have a Python notebook or so on, so you have all the orange bubbles as part of the flow. And the orange bubbles are going to pretty much allow all those coders to create artifacts that are reusable at the end-to-end pipeline, and that are going to allow them to have their own independence, right? So I can actually work on my Jupyter notebook, point these to my own code environment, handle my own packages, handle my independence from the Python programming perspective, but at the same time, being able to collaborate in a way that is clear for the rest of my team and in a way that makes sense from an end-to-end perspective, right? So sharing this information or being able to work on my own IDE where I have the Code Studio to work on. You can also be equally efficient, use the same methodologies that you are used to, but having the bigger picture in mind, right? So when I say the bigger picture in mind is that perhaps somebody else is going to do something with this data, they're going to trace it, we're going to create a model that is going to get deployed, and yada, 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 right? Now, from every single of these boxes, we will be able to generate AutoML on the AutoML capabilities. And this is a whole other set of advantages for these teams to work in machine learning, right? Because it's not only, hey, can I actually create a quick prototype here and see what kind of algorithms I can bring to the table? Well, Dataiku is going to give you that user interface. And when we say, hey, transparency, I need to know exactly what kind of behind the scenes do I have here. So I know exactly which algorithms I have. I know how I tweak them. I know how I am configuring this machine learning. I am doing my own internal tests so I can guarantee that whatever I am generating is going to be a good machine learning, but I can also experiment. So I can run as many sessions as I need to. I can add or remove machine learning algorithms, tweak the parameters in a different way and so on, and still being able to use everything that my team has been working on in one way or another, right? So back to the connecting all the dots. We may have guys that are using the AutoML here and creating this very easy to consume model. Or we may have guys that are actually already produced the model in a Python Jupyter notebook, and all we have to do is make it part of that flow as an orange recipe, right? So Dataiku will connect the entire data pipeline from the beginning to end. It's going to incorporate all of these personas, empowering them to work in different ways. And when I'm saying different ways, we are actually thinking about coding or not coding personas, right? So we can think about a very diverse end-to-end, where we have all of these projects that are leveraging different options in one way or another, but at the end is an end-to-end that is representing blue boxes, data, tables, yellow circles, transformation to that data. Even I am grouping them, joining them, cleaning them, splitting them, filtering them, and so on. Everything that is orange, we mentioned, is programming. So all the coders will have the orange menu as well. And then everything that is green represents machine learning itself, giving you a full transparency into the entire ABC, allowing your teams to reuse assets that were created one way or another, coding or not coding skills, and allowing us as a data science community to work together and to empower each other with what we are creating as part of the pipeline, right? So being aware of time, I'm going to share with you a set of assets that I think are going to be very helpful. The first one that I want to share is this one, where you can actually download Dataiku and start working today in Dataiku. The second one that I'm going to share is about Dataiku Academy, that actually will guide you step by step towards the different exercises. I recommend you just click on the Quick Start program, and if you identified with one of these personas, just follow this exercise, and in 1 hour you should be able to produce something end to end that is going to allow you to have the vision into what else you can accomplish with this thing. Just as an FYI, we have been seeing a lot of these data outcomes being consumed in data dashboards, tableaus, Power BIs, and so on. We are very compatible with that, so we can always show and share results in different ways, and these plugins and connectors are very important on that matter as well. And then I will say the sample page is a very good sample where we will have different projects end to end that are showcasing some of our use cases that are targeting specific verticals and industry and so on. And within each of the use cases, you should have a link to the actual solution. So this is going to take you to Dataiku. It's going to give you access to our public instance, and it's going to show you the project itself. So many things for you to explore. I recommend you can actually have the option to have those links that I'm sharing right now, and maybe you can bookmark it. You can bookmark all the links as Dataiku, and that is going to give you a very good option. So if you go to the top of the tab, you can say bookmark all the tabs, and then you're going to have a very good collection of links right there that are going to get you started with Dataiku. I'm going to stop right there. Any questions, any comments, anything that you would like to ask? Well, thank you all, and enjoy the links that I share. Great resources to start with, and good luck on this data science journey.